In the last video, we talked about what makes up a supply curve. Well, a supply curve is made up of different prices, different quantities. And we know that at the high side of the supply curve, so if I kind of generate my supply curve real quick, we know that way up top here, it takes a really high price for me to be profitable. Okay? It takes a high price for me as the supplier to be profitable. If the price was lower, I wouldn't be profitable and therefore I wouldn't exist as a business. But down here, I can be profitable. So I can be profitable, I can make a profit, I can supply even at a low price. Right? So we talked about this relationship between the price goes higher, more people can be profitable. If they could be profitable at a lower price, they would have already been in the market. But they have to have a higher price in order to be profitable. So it showed us that relationship between price and quantity. And we derived that, and we kind of showed that in the last video, the relationship between those two things. We looked at some prices and quantities. And in this one, what we're going to do is I'm going to kind of recreate this graph that we had before where we had price and quantity. And we took a look at a few different prices and then a few quantities associated with those prices. And now what we're going to do is we're going to imagine that there are a few things that might change, and we're going to call those outside factors, right? So what are some outside factors that might change the supply of soda, right? So it's not price or quantity. Those are inside factors. What's an outside factor that changes the entire supply curve for soda? So let's say, just for a moment, that our example is that the price of sugar decreases. Sugar is cheaper. Okay, how does that have to do with soda? What does sugar have to do with soda? Well, I don't know if you know this or not, but sugar is used to make soda. So soda is full of sugar. So if sugar is cheaper, and I'm a producer of soda, I can buy sugar cheaper than I could before, so I could make more sodas than I could before, right? Because soda is cheaper to make. So now at $1, instead of producing 20, I might be able to produce, let's say, 30, because soda is cheaper to make. I can make more of them, right? And I can make 35, and I can make 40, and I can make 45. So at every price, I could make more than I did before. So before at 10, I could make 20. Or sorry, at $1, I can make 20. And now at $1, I can make 30. Right, so my bullet point's way out here. And before, at 2, I could make 25. Right, but now at 2, I can make 35, right, which is way out here. So we're going to have a point like that. All right, so you're following me. Our line is going to move now kind of this direction, right? So I'm going to have this new supply curve that has shifted to the right at 2, at 3, at 4, at every price, right? And so what we would call this an increase in supply. The supply curve has increased. I can supply more at every point than I could before. Well, we could also have the opposite take place. So let's say sugar prices went up. If sugar prices went up, I'd have less at every price than I did before, right? So my whole supply curve would shift to the left. So if we said this input of sugar went up in price, I wouldn't be able to supply as many. I could only supply maybe, let's say, half as much, or I'd have to reduce my supply. It shifts the whole supply curve to the left. So this would be a decrease caused by an increase in price of an input, sugar. Right? So if we showed this one on our little chart, it would be saying, okay, originally I was at 20, but now I can only produce 10 and 15 and 20 and 25. And that's what this S1 is. And S2 is this one, and S0 is that one. Okay? So all these are just showing a shift of the supply curve. So there are these different factors that shift the supply curve. And so these are what we call the determinants of supply, or the supply shifters. So supply shifters, we're going to use what we call the first one. The first one is the number of producers, like how many people are choosing to produce this good. Okay, so number of producers. If a market becomes more profitable, we might see firms enter, and therefore it's going to shift the supply curve. All right, the second one, the one that we used our example for, is inputs, or input costs. All right, so input resources or input costs. And these are things like sugar to soda, or steel to cars, or something like that, right? So if the input price changes, some resource used in the production of the good, if that changes, it's going to shift the supply of the good. Number 3 is technology. All right, so like the assembly line, increase the supply of automobiles. Some technology makes it better. The second to last one is government policy. So sometimes the government can get involved through regulation, through taxes, through subsidies. And this is going to either make it easier or more difficult to produce. So taxes and regulations, those are going to reduce supply or decrease supply. Subsidies is the government giving you money. All right, and that's going to increase supply. The last one, the fifth one, is expectation. And expectation is like knowing or believing that a price is going to change in the future. So if I believe that the price is going to go up in the future, I'm going to decrease my current supply so I can supply more in the future. If I believe that the price in the future is going to drop, like I know the price is going to drop tomorrow, well, then I'm going to increase my supply today. Right? I'm going to supply today because it's going to drop in the future. So that's how a future price expectation can increase or decrease the supply curve. So these are the supply shifters. This is what a shift in supply looks like, and this is what it looks like when we look at it on a table.